Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on Culture A. On today's episode, I have a very special guest with me today. This is Rana Mukhaimer. Rana, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Super happy to be here.
I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Rana, who she is, why she's on the show. Not only is she a senior HR leader, but she's had experience over 16 years in multinational global organizations such as Nestle, such as Amazon, and she has progressed throughout her career significantly. She has the ability to really navigate her career well and to make very strong connections with her teams and with her stakeholders. And so I wanted you to come on the show today just to share a little bit of your insights. So again, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. And this is my first podcast, so this is going to be a lot of fun. But
It's okay. It's new for me too.
I'm excited. And no, thanks a lot for the awesome introduction.
Of course.
Yeah.
Let's jump right in. Okay.
Sure.
So the way that some of these episodes have taken shape is some individuals give us their experience on how they kind of navigated through their journey.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into the details, maybe you can give our listeners just some background on who you are. So maybe tell us how you progressed. What is your HR journey like?
Sure. So basically, I've been in HR all my life. I started my university studies, bachelor's in human resources. So that went all the way back in Montreal, and then I did my master's in HR. And then I said, okay, let me do my studies in HR. And ever since I've been in HR. So I started all the way in recruitment. So I worked in a recruitment agency. And then once Montreal got too cold, I moved to Dubai. And I worked 5 years in Nestle. So I did, part of talent acquisition, HR generalist, etc. And then now been around 6 years in Amazon, so doing all the different pillars in HR, cut across all of them. So I have a good experience across, whether it's talent, recruitment, employee relations, across the different pillars of HR.
You're just well-rounded.
Pretty much, yeah. So I like HR so much that I've cut across all the different pillars.
You know what's funny is that I always tell people I didn't go out seeking a role within TA.
Yeah.
That's not how that's not how I started my journey.
Okay.
I fell into it. And a lot of people I speak to say the same thing about HR, but you've made a conscious
Yeah,
decision.
yeah. It's weird. The thing is, not a lot of people went into HR. I remember when I told my family that I'm going to get into HR, they were a little bit surprised because that's basically a designation that not a lot of people get into back in the day. So, funny thing is I did some sort of survey just to learn a little bit more about myself, and HR came up as
That's funny.
a specialization to get into. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me get into that. And after doing my bachelor's, when I worked, I loved it so much. I said, okay, I want to learn more. And that's what I did my master's. So ever since, it's been a consistent, I would say, HR journey that I've been in. So, and absolutely still love it.
That's so good. That's so good. Okay, so the reason I wanted to bring you on the podcast is not only because you have a lot of strength in HR, but it's also because you have this really incredible ability to build really strong relationships with your business stakeholders.
Right.
I have heard only good, strong, positive feedback from you, and that's challenging to always get.
Yeah,
I mean, you deal with characters that are very, very different. Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to always get like that positive feedback. So I wanted to know if you could help our listeners to understand, like if you can dive into some of the tactics or the practices that you've adopted over the years that really help you make a difference in this space.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can think of a couple. I think what's really important to note is that building relationships is not something that happens in a day, right? So it's really important to be patient, and it's important to understand that these relationships develop over time. Mm-hmm. So for me, I had to work with different client groups, and it's switched. And it was, hey, I came back from maternity leave, and by the way, you're going to be handling a different client group, and heads up, these people are a little bit tough. So I knew that, it's coming in, it's things are not going to be easy. So I had to be patient, and I know that things happen over time. What I think is really, really important is, and I know this sounds really easy, but I had to do a lot more listening and learning from my end. to get to know my stakeholders. So I spent a lot of time of doing regular cadences with them, really trying to understand what their pain points are, learning more about them, how they add value, and so doing a lot more of the listening aspect. And then what I did is that I would do a lot of the follow-ups. So touching base with your stakeholders from time to time really adds that value, and they really feel that you care. They really feel like you understand them, and that you're there to support and to help them in their business organization. So I think these little things really do help. So for me, it's one is be patient, two, schedule those regular cadences, and then three, even if you don't have an update, like they tell you you work on a project or whatnot, or they have a specific problem with their team, and you may not have an update because you're still working on it. What's really important is making sure that you touch base with them, making sure you tell them that you're still working on it and whatnot. That still, builds that relationship slowly. And then you start to navigate, the difficulties, listening to what they have. And I feel like that really helps in relationship building with the business.
That definitely helps. I mean, and those points are key and can really, I think, help a lot of listeners. I recently had somebody on the show that was talking about how once they started to actively listen, it totally transformed how they were perceived by others and what they were able to achieve in their role. So the fact that this is resonating throughout the episodes shows that it's really a skill that's
absolutely. And I think that a lot of people, what the mistake they do is that they jump in, they just want to provide a solution. Like, hey, I'm here, by the way, I'm your new HR, I'm here to help you, and I'm here to solve all your problems. And that's not going to be the case, right? So for me, it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of asking questions, and also showing that curiosity of learning more really helps. And then through time, with supporting them on certain issues or certain complexities that they have in their org, you're able to kind of build that trust with that person because you're following up, you're adding value, you're there to support them in what they need.
Let's shift a little bit, okay? Because when you're in your career for a very long time, and when you kind of shift roles or change scope or develop within one organization, you're sometimes faced with like unanticipated challenges, right? This happens to everybody. Without going into specific details,
right?
Can you share how you kind of generally manage your expectations when you're faced with an unexpected professional setback? Something that you didn't anticipate and that you feel is kind of a roadblock for you. How do you deal with that?
And it happens a lot, right? And not just where I work. And I think it happens to everybody. And I think what's really important is to give perspective and saying like, okay, let's say today's a challenging day, or let's say I really had a really poor day in terms of, a project that I'm working on, or let's say a specific failure or mistake that has happened. You take it in. And what's really important is that I reflect on, what has happened, how can I improve and whatnot. And I truly believe like, okay, today was a bad day, and you know what, tomorrow is going to be a new day. And just taking it day by day is what helps me get through. I celebrate very small wins, so it's like, okay, you know what, let's say today, this whole week is horrible. I have so many things that are happening, and let's say I have difficult challenges, people that come at me, and there are different problems that happen. At the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I survived today. Tomorrow is going to be a new day. And it just kind of helps me say like, okay, I've surpassed these little things and I can move forward. I think these little things really help me to stay motivated and to move forward. And then the other thing I would say is that just making sure that you learn from the mistakes that have happened, right? Not everything is in your control. It's okay. I've made a mistake. That's fine. And everybody does, right? So it's like, okay, I can't really be super hard on myself. I move on and I say, okay, I've swallowed it right now. I'll move on to the next day, and hopefully I'll be better at it.
That's so mature. That's so hard to do.
And I do this with by the way, not just with work, like, even as a mom. Even as a friend or as a partner to my husband, sometimes you do make mistakes, and that's okay. And I think what's important is acknowledging, right? Learning and say, okay, I'm going to try to be better and move forward. So that's how I have the same attitude with work, because you can't just be consumed with work only. You have other priorities in life, and just say like, okay, today was just a bad day, and let's just move on to the next one.
That's a big one. That's a really big one. And I think a lot of people struggle. I mean, I myself struggle with that. Like, sometimes it's very easy to get consumed in you have a bad day, then you have another bad day, then it's a bad week.
Yeah.
And you let these things compile in
Yeah.
your head. Oh,
Yeah.
Sunday this happened,
Yeah.
and then Monday this happened, instead of closing the chapter on Sunday and moving on to Monday. So it's very hard, but I can see how that's kind of kept you going.
Yeah. And you just have to kind of just take it day by day kind of thing. And that's okay. Like, you're gonna have bad weeks, you're gonna have bad days, but things will always get better, because you just kind of see, like I said, celebrate the small wins. Like, if I did one good thing today, I'm happy with that, and I move forward.
I can see why so many people speak so highly. Like, okay, so disclaimer, I
You're
have
too kind. Okay.
no, disclaimer, I have a personal relationship with Rana. We're close friends. We've worked together in the past. But I have a lot of respect for you, because I see how you work. Like, you're really a dedicated worker. You work very hard. You don't let things get you down. You really do build strong relationships. So that's the reason I brought you on, not because we know each other.
Great.
And because I know you, I have heard consistently people speak very highly of you. Okay, and so I understand where that comes from. Your work ethic, your approachability. It's not something that a lot of people have. Like, especially in HR, a lot of people are, regardless of what HR do to try and build that trust factor, people shy away from having these conversations with their HR person. Okay, and for you, that's not the case. I see people contacting you all the time, or coming up to you, or booking meetings with you. So you have that factor, that help, that trust that you've built. So I want to understand, like, how you ensure to maintain a positive, supportive approach, like, for employees that are maybe sometimes demanding things that are quite a challenge. And do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. And and why I've been also, like, just to backtrack, why I've also been in HR is because I'm super passionate about it, because I'm super passionate about working with people. A lot of times people say, like, why do you want to stay in this field? Is because I love working with people. I love the fact that I work with the business. We work on different challenges. So it's not like every day I wake up and I do the same thing all the time. Like you said, every day is a new challenge, and it may not be the right problem to solve, or it might be like the problem I want to solve. But I think that's the beauty of it, the fact that I'm able to work with people, and that gives me that, it's strange to say this, but that kind of gives me the energy to work with people, even though I'm working on challenging aspects. So I think that's really important. And you mentioned another thing that I think is super key. I learned this the hard way. Networking is so underrated, and it's and the fact is, I can't stress this enough, and not just in HR. Networking is so key in our careers right now, because it really helps you grow. It really helps you expand in terms of your skills. And I can't stress how important it is. So with me in HR, it's like I always try to network, whether people in my peers, like in HR or outside of HR, within my company, outside of my company. I think that's so important. And it kind of helps you grow as a person, and you learn a lot of new things. It's raw, and it's like and it's just, I always tell this to my colleagues, I tell this to my friends, that it's so important that you continue to kind of expand your skills and continuously try to do this, because it helps you as a person to stay on top of it and continuously stay motivated.
100%. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people who, I mean, maybe I should stop using myself as an example, but there's a lot of people, I think, who are like me, who, networking for me was not my favorite thing before. Okay.
Yeah.
It was something that I had to do. It wasn't something that I looked forward to doing. And so in a way, this podcast pushes me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, perhaps.
Totally pushes me out. But you're right, because in the years that I've kind of pushed myself through this, like, hesitation, it has really helped me in ways to learn. Like, we have conversations with other individual senior leaders, and you can digest it, you can resonate with it in a challenge that you're facing today. And the way that you would have approached it prior to that networking opportunity would have been how you've always approached it. And because you have this influence from someone else, or this exposure, it really changes the way that you approach things. And so I've learned a lot, like, just from pushing myself this way. And you're right, it's key.
It's key, and by the way, just a tip, like for people who don't like to network, or let's say they shy away from it. I'm the kind of person that would tell them that perhaps, like, let's say this week I'm going to, let's say, a networking event or whatnot, and so it's a lot of energy, right? So it's exhaustive, and you say like, okay, for for this week I'm done, and then let's move on to another time, because a lot of people think that networking is something that you have to do every day. It's not the
Yeah.
case. So just make sure you pace yourself, because and once you're done, it feels good. It feels like, okay, I either met somebody new or I learned something, and I think that's helpful. And
Or I
networking,
didn't, and it's not so bad.
correct?
Yeah.
Correct. And it doesn't have to be in person. Like
Yeah.
if you're that tired, you can do it online. That would, LinkedIn is great. So I think networking is really, really valuable.
Yeah. Okay. Right now in the HR world, there's a lot of things that are changing.
Right.
Okay. Employee demands, candidate demands, how business operates, automation. Like there's so many things changing
Yeah.
in parallel or simultaneously right now. Okay. Given that, the fact that it's ever evolving, what are you doing to make sure that you're kind of staying on top of your game?
Yeah. So I just mentioned LinkedIn. So for me, so my morning routine is super important. So getting that coffee and whatnot. So before I check my emails, I'm always on LinkedIn. So I'm always trying to read articles that, again, be posted by HR peers, by professional networks, and then also as well like business leaders and whatnot. So I try to read like what's happening in the business, what's up to date. Even when I look at hiring and companies that are looking for new talent, etc. So I try to read it online as much as possible in terms of like what are the new trends, where are we in terms of updates and business updates. So that helps me to kind of just refresh my mind and what's going on around us, not just within my company, so what's outside of that, and that helps me to kind of stay up to date on what to look out for, what to kind of build my skills on, what to focus on as for myself in terms of growing as an HR leader. So these things I think are really, really important. Obviously, if you have opportunities to attend conferences within your field or outside of it, I think that's also always adds value. You learn a lot. You get speakers from different, different either I would say industries or even countries and whatnot, and they talk about like what's happening in the world. I think these are also important to do. But if you're sitting at home or if you're sitting in the office, start with LinkedIn. I think it's a great tool to use and to help you in terms of staying up to date.
It is. It is. I'm on it all the time. And anyone who follows this podcast knows I'm on it all the time. I'm posting all the time.
As am I. Everyone's like, I know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly what you're posting. So yeah, it's a great tool.
Okay. So I'm trying something new with the podcast with every guest. And I want to kind of end off the episode with tips from you. But tips on like, what would you say are the most important key things for HR professionals? One, that are just starting off their career, and two, those seasoned HR leaders. Like what tips would you give them?
Okay. So this season, can I start with the season?
You can start with the season.
Okay, great. So this is seasoned ones, because I think this is really important. So I'll tell you this: for seasoned HR folks, I think what we all need to realize is that data and technology has gone to new levels right now, where we're no longer needed to kind of do the back end of reporting and extracting data and whatnot. Like all of that is going to be super automated, where your role is no longer going to be putting all of this together. Your role is to analyze the data and play the consultant part, where you need to show the business how you can add value. So I think that is going to be really, really important. They're going to look at you and be like, okay, we already have this data. We can see it. What can you offer us? So here is where I would say for the seasoned HR folks. For the new folks, get ready. It's a crazy world out there. But no, for the new folks, I think, like I said, I talked about this. I think networking is super important. So, while you make good at what you do, and I learned this the hard way, it's so important to branch out and to kind of put your name out there in terms of like learning, asking questions, being involved. Sometimes like not only within your own role, but like also expanding outside of your scope, I think is so important. So because you don't want to wait when it's too late and they're gonna be like, yeah, Sarah, you're great at what you do, but like no one knows who you are.
Yeah, get that exposure.
You know, get that exposure, like, you know, network, talk to different stakeholders, learn. I think that is so important, and it's gonna help you like as you grow into your career in HR.
It's true. That resonates. And I think you're spot on. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how I would answer this question, and I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for today.
Yeah.
I felt like this flew by.
Yes.
It really went by really fast. So thank you so much, Rana.
No
It was
worries.
really nice to have you
Thanks
on.
for having me and having, you know, it's my first podcast experience, and you made it a really pleasant one. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you. And I'm happy that this is like the inauguration of the studio experience, you know, with you,
exactly.
you know, as awkward as it might be. So thank you. Thank you so much. For anyone who's listening in, please like, share, subscribe to Culture A, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you, Rana.
Thank you. Have a good day.